start that again. What makes you feel fulfilled in songwriting?
Who asked that?
I won't tell you. I mean, I suppose it won't ruin the question, but I'll tell you after you've answered it.
Okay. I think I enjoy the creative process probably more than anything else. That for me is like the enjoyment of music, and I think I feel most fulfilled when an idea begins to like formulate. You know when you kind of just, I don't know if you do this, but when you're sitting, you're writing ideas, and I tend to just sit and, you know, like with the guitar and just try, because that's my primary route into play and, you know, into music, because I understand the world of music through a guitar. I can't play keys or I can't sing. So it has to be the guitar, which is how I interface with things. I start and just run through ideas, and then the ideas kind of come and go. And I feel like I have like 2 or 3 practice ideas, which are usually pretty crap. And then I settle on one, which is kind of like, you know, and it's almost like you're waiting for the light bulb to come on. But I feel like inspiration is like a practice that you need to hone. Like anything else, I think you need to be able to push through not being inspired to get to a situation where you come up with something that is inspired. And so I feel most fulfilled when you've kind of got past those beginning ideas, you know, those first, you know, that 1 or 2nd or 3rd idea that might not work. And then the light bulb comes on and you're like, oh, okay, this is something that sticks. And then as that path kind of reveals itself and you start to just shape away at what is a song, and, you know, it's I feel like that's the most fulfilling part. And then I feel like it all happens at once. As soon as that light bulb comes on, I'm able to see the route. I know where it is straight away. It's like, okay, this is where to go with it now. It's almost like you get a sat nav, and it's just kind of like, this is the way to the song, and it kind of like reveals itself with all its twists and turns. And don't get me wrong, like any good sat nav, I always take a wrong turn and have to come back on myself and, you know, make adjustments on the way. But I feel like that's the most fulfilling part, when it reveals itself and you're like, this is the song. This is what I'm doing now. I feel like that's the point where like I'm most fulfilled, and the creative process is definitely the most inspiring and most enjoyable part of music in general for me.
Yeah, I kind of like the sat nav analogy. You could sort of continue that. You know, if you go the wrong way, there might be some beautiful little road. Often not the case. You know, you kind of encounter stuff. Yeah, I definitely know that feeling, and I totally agree with the working on inspiration. Like I think there is this kind of romantic idea that, you know, songwriters just have this kind of thing where they just get inspired and then that's how they do. Yeah, and there are obviously people that do that, but
I think the thing is that with any good songwriter, if you imagine someone like a Bob Dylan who's written hundreds of what are deemed as classic songs, most of the time with him, if you think about the amount of songs that he's written in his life, there's probably, for the many albums or great albums that he's written that are legendary and are now like songs that are passed down, you know, generational classics, there's probably hundreds of songs that you don't hear, then practice ones, those couple of ideas where he's gone through it that you're like, okay, well, you know, these weren't deemed good enough by him. So when he does get the inspiration in that moment, it was like, oh yeah, I wrote that song in 10 minutes. It's like, yeah, you wrote that one in 10 minutes because, you know, the 100 songs prior to that, which weren't very good, took you hours and hours and hours. So when the light bulb came on, you were practiced at writing and you were practiced in the craft, that you were able to write the song that when inspiration struck and you had the tools to do it. I think it's a Mick Gordon quote, isn't it? Where it's where he said about like, you know, professionals don't wait for inspiration. Professionals just get the job done. And I quite like that, because as someone who just, you know, his output is phenomenal. I feel like that's kind of what you need to do. You need to be able to teach yourself how to just play through them moments where you're not inspired, because in doing so, you tend to just inspire yourself anyway. You'll find the route, you'll find what's interesting to you. And to me, that's kind of like the most interesting part of it. When you find a thing that's kind of like, okay, yeah, this is what's cool. You know, I think that's the same with all songwriters. So when people kind of say, oh yeah, he wrote that in 10 minutes. Yeah, he probably did write that song in 10 minutes, but it probably took 20 years to be able to write a song in 10 minutes. It's not like, you know, all these greats. It's like when people turn around and, you know, that usual thing of Eddie Van Halen and Slash didn't practice. It was like, yeah, but they played a lot. which is, isn't that just practice? Call it what you will, whether you call it practice or whether you call it play. And they played a lot, so you can't claim to be, great guitar players didn't practice. They were just great. No, they did. They just give it a different name. So, it's that kind of thing to me. Sorry, that was quite a long-winded answer for what was quite a simple question. I apologize.
No, it's good. I think it's reframing stuff is an interesting concept. Like I was listening to a podcast recently, and the guy was talking about how he works very consistently and kind of doesn't really have any particular hobbies or anything, and how a lot of people, often probably less sort of quote unquote successful people, would say to him, "Oh, but that's unhealthy, that balance, like that lack of balance. You're just working all the time." It's like, well, it's like define work and define play. Like if you enjoy it, what's unhealthy about it? And it's the same with like practice versus just enjoying the instrument. It's like, well, what do you don't have to call it anything. Like it's just when you sit down and think, oh, I've got to go and practice, it's like, it depends. I suppose it depends how you frame it mentally as to how. Yeah, I'm trying to think how to sort of formulate this thought, but hopefully you get what I'm sort of getting. No,
I'm with you. I feel like it's in different stages of your life as well. So as a teenager, I started playing guitar on my 15th birthday, well, around that. And so I got my first guitar on my 15th birthday. And for me, guitar was just an enjoyable thing. It was the first thing that I picked up that just made sense. So I was never particularly talented at sports or, anything else. So it was the first kind of interest that I had that I picked up, and it was like, I really enjoy this thing. And so for me, all I wanted to do was come home from school and play guitar. And practice wasn't in the equation. Practice wasn't something that I'd considered. It was just playing the guitar, learning songs, learning to play. And so when people were like, oh, I've got to go and practice, I'm like, what do you practice? What is it? And I thought that it, for myself, that I was doing something wrong because I wasn't practicing, I wasn't putting the time in practicing. But, I think in terms of the hours that I put in, I probably put more hours into playing because I enjoyed playing and I was just learning songs. And I'm quite, in the way I like to learn things, I like to just dissect it and be meticulous with it. So for me, it was kind of like, just rip things to bits, find out, slow it down. I used to have like a little crappy Windows XP, like desktop, wasn't even a laptop in my mum and dad's house. It was terrible, but I used to slow VLC media player down to like 50% speed because you could keep the pitch. I just remember learning tons of songs like that way, and like just every little nuance and the hand slides, and just wanted it to be as perfect to the record. And for me, that wasn't like practice, that was just me playing. But if you look at it, that's kind of methodical practice, technical practice, ear training. It's a lot wrapped into one. But when you don't frame it as that and you think this is just playing the guitar and this is just enjoyment, for instance, something like Little Wing by Hendrix, I loved that when I was a kid. I loved Axis Boulder Love as an album. I thought it was one of the most phenomenal pieces of music, well, as an album conceptually. And so I just wanted to learn all of it. So in doing so, I just slow these songs down and learn every bit of it. And so you're learning how the chords work, you're learning how the underlying harmony works. And no one's telling you that you're learning how this scale relates to the chord that's behind it, the interval choices, the root movements in the bass, how the drums are playing, where the accents are. No one's telling you where this is, but you're understanding this. And again, this informs how you begin to write because you understand these concepts and you've never practiced them. You're not actively practicing them. You're just playing. But the art of that itself and the act of doing so is a practice, but it's just reframed. And I think as a teenager, for me, that was invaluable because I spent most of my teens just learning everything that I enjoyed. And it was only when I got into my 20s that I was becoming aware of more like conceptual play. And so it was like, here's how to play over this change, here's how to play over these chords, here's some interesting time signatures, all that kind of stuff. And then that became, I need to practice these concepts. And so that reframed differently. And I think as I matured, my approach matured, and that's when it became practice. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't still play, because there are times where I'll come home from whatever I'm doing, work, the gym, whatever, and pick the guitar up and just play for hours because I enjoy playing guitar. And there are days where I've got to learn something or I want to try and integrate something into me playing, and that is practice. And so it's separating those two concepts, because I think a lot of people get bogged down thinking that they've got to practice, they've got to put all this time in. But if you enjoy what you do and you never really, you never really kind of practicing per se, you're just playing. And even in those moments for me where I am actively practicing a concept, I might get pissed off with myself if I can't get something immediately, and I might get frustrated. But at the end of the day, I love playing guitar, so I'll figure a way through it. It's just a logic problem for me. It's kind of, is it a technical issue? Is it something to do with the harmony that I can't understand? But eventually, with enough time spent into it and just absorbing it and sitting on it, you'll get there with it. And so then that practice becomes playing, because that comes part of your playing, and it's just cyclical, because the more things you learn, the more it just carries on. And it's that whole thing of people learning music theory. I think you learn music theory to forget everything about music theory, because you don't think about it in the moment. You're not considering, maybe you might have an idea of what you'd like to do, but you're not really considering, I would really like to, play over this chord and really highlight this Lydian sound. You're not doing that at any moment. You do that in practice, so that on stage you don't think about any of these things. I think that's the difference for me between practice and play. I think you practice enough so that play is enjoyable.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like a different sort of spin on it is when I'm teaching. I think sometimes I sort of turn my brain off a bit, and sometimes I think like, I'm not really improving at guitar here. I'm holding one, and I'm not playing a huge amount when I'm teaching, right? But like, I'm sort of on and off demonstrating stuff, and I realised a lot of things that I'm not one for improvising a huge amount, like your bluesy kind of improv. I don't tend to sit down and do much of that, just in my own time. But I noticed I've got better. I kind of only recently thought, I'm actually quite a lot better at that than I used to be. And I think it's just I've not really thought about it. It's just, obviously a lot of people come to guitar teachers because they want to learn to improvise. So naturally I've just taught loads of people to improvise, and I think I've actually just taken a lot in kind of at my respective level and done that. And again, I wasn't thinking about it at any point, and I really don't. I spend more time doing it now, funnily enough, just because because I'm better at it. I probably just enjoy it a bit more. But
that's it. That feeds into what I was saying there, because you've got better at it, so you've practiced it to the point where when you play, you don't think about it, and so you enjoy it more. So you're more likely to do it. So it's that whole reframing it. You've practiced this concept. So whether you've called it practice, and in your instance, it was teaching. So it wasn't under the guise of this is practice. You were teaching. So you've taught these concepts and you understand them. And then as soon as you've kind of got to a situation where it's all kind of fell into place for you and it's under your fingers, it's just play then, and it's just enjoyable.
Yeah. And it's funny. I don't know where, something that I thought about recently. So I've been working on my vocals a lot recently. I'm unsure what path I want to go down sort of creatively on the music side of things. The teaching is what keeps me afloat, and I enjoy it, but obviously I want to have these creative pursuits, and it's difficult because I don't know. I think I enjoy singing, but obviously my level of singing is way below my level of guitar. It's also harder to practice singing because I can't just go like belting notes out in my living room. Neighbours aren't like that. So that's
their problem.
Well, it might be my problem very quickly though. And it's one of those things. I kind of, at first I thought, I don't know if I really enjoy it, but then I kind of thought maybe I don't enjoy it just because I'm not that good yet. And like, I'm finally getting a little bit better now. Over the years, it's one of those things that's improved through just writing songs, just constantly hearing music and pitches and harmonies and all sorts. And now I'm thinking maybe, as a just general view on life, maybe we need to sort of, not as a society, but just as a collective, get used to that idea that like, it's creatives as well, particularly, that idea that maybe you won't enjoy the first, like normalizing actually not, I don't know, putting in the hours to get past that initial stage. Because a lot of people, I've had loads of people come here for like a sort of trial guitar lesson, and I can tell straight away they're just, if they've really not played guitar much, if at all. I can tell straight away if they're not willing to just grind out a few months of guitar,
I mean, I think there's it was actually, Ben Meinl, the drummer, the guy who runs Musicism. I've worked with Ben quite closely, and he's got a phrase, and I don't know whether he stole this off someone else. And he was like, "You've got to suck at first. You've got to really suck." And he was like, "You've just got to embrace the suck." It really made me laugh, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, I don't know if it's something he's come out with, but like I like that you've got to embrace the suck. And I was like, yeah, I mean, you're into your fitness as well, aren't you? As well,
yeah, as of recently, yeah. I can't claim to be that. That'd be pretty. A few people watching like, oh, what a fraud. No, he's not. But recently, yes. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, sorry. So I mean, the gym's like a recent, like last couple of years thing for me. I've found fitness as a way of kind of like mediating me. Mental health from sitting down, from doing a day job all day, because like I just sit down all day otherwise. Like I still work a 9 to 5, which requires me to sit behind the desk, and I do this, which predominantly is sat behind a desk recording, and it's only when I actually get to play live that I'm not sat down. But I think like with fitness, the expectation is that you're going to be shit immediately. So like, I don't really understand why people feel like they're going to be amazing at something else immediately. And learning to drive, I mean, like it's as a kid, you don't remember being shit at talking and then being able to talk. You just, your experience with learning to talk is as soon as you're conscious, you're talking. You were doing it before you remember being able to not do it. Like walking, you don't remember learning to walk. All these things happen prior to your memories starting, really. You don't remember anything before that. But you do learn to drive as an adult, and you remember being shit at driving. You remember getting in that car the first time and just stalling straight away and just being shit at it. And you remember getting less and less shit until eventually you're on that lesson where you're on the motorway or whatever, and you're driving and you're not thinking about it. And like now, you just get in the car and don't think about it. If you need to go and, I'm in Newcastle today. I'm going to drive home later. I'll drive home 4 hours. I'll jump in the car and I won't think about it. It's not something that I have to think about. In the same way, going to the gym. The first time you go to the gym, what's all this equipment? How do I work all this? The expectation is that you're going to be shit. You're not going to be able to lift the weights that you think that you're going to be able to. You're going to ache more. Your performance is going to be pretty piss poor. You're not going to have the good recovery time. You're not going to, you know what I mean? You've just in general, your form's going to be poor. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the better you get at it, and the better your form is, the better your performance and recovery is, and consistency is, the more you lift. So it's kind of that thing. You just expect to be shit in every other aspect of your life when you start. Why would music be any different? And it's like when people just kind of walk in, it's like, yeah, I want to learn to play Sweet Child of Mine. It's like, oh, great, yeah, we can do that intro. And it's like, yeah, I want to learn a solo. It's like, slow down. We're not going anywhere near that. You know what I mean? If you can't play a handful of chords and potentially that intro lick, you are absolutely nowhere near going near that solo. And so we've done a lot of groundwork to get your hands working. And I think people have this expectation that they can just, that all the greats have just got greatness in them and they just pick the guitar up. Like Slash just didn't pick the guitar up and just go, Sweet Child of Mine on day one. There's 15 years of work before Sweet Child of Mine happens. Or Eddie Van Halen didn't pick the guitar up and go, Eruption straight away. It's like, I've just invented two-handed tapping. I've never even picked the instrument up. That never happened. It's just, for me, it's just kind of like, you've got to understand that at some point in their development, they were shit too. And it's okay to be shit at something until you get better at it. And it's okay to put the work in until you're not shit. That's just, that's life, isn't it? If you don't put the work in, you just remain shit at it. I remained shit at driving for a long time until I finally put the work in and learned to drive. It's just a fact of life. So music should be no different than going to the gym or learning to drive.
Yeah, I one thing that I, speaking on the sort of the fitness side of things, I kind of early this year, it kind of coincided with like New Year's resolutions, I guess, but it kind of wasn't a New Year's resolution. There were a lot of things, just general things in life that I was like, I need to just fix a lot of things. Like, it's not like life was terrible, it's just like, I kind of thought there's a lot of things that just, I feel like I'm not doing as well as I want to. So I set myself, I was like, I'll do this for 100 days. And I made a spreadsheet of all the things I want to do every day, and I tick them all off. And there's a big list, right? There's probably like 20 things on there every day, but some of them will like just get up on time, or like, so you can pretty much tick them off the moment you wake up, assuming you get up on time. And I realized it took me about 3 weeks. And at the end, the other thing is at the end of the day, I would measure a few things like, just general like mood or like stress, or I can't remember what other things, productivity, all these things. And I noticed in the space of 3 weeks, roughly, I went from my baseline being, I can't remember where, sort of middle to low, to being like I could see. I even like I got really nerdy. I even like graphed it out, and you could literally just see it go up, and then it's literally 3 weeks or so between step one of just committing to it, and then on the third week, month or so, like a lot of things are totally different in my life. You know, I'm not like in a whole other place just because of that, but now I'm way more consistent with so many things just from that. And I always wonder like how many people, on a less important level, maybe how many people are just 3 weeks away from just maybe picking up an instrument or whatever. But then, you know, on a more profound level, things like mental health or things like, you know, career development, you know, how many people might just be like 3 weeks away, 3 weeks of just dedicated work, which is hard to make yourself do if you don't have the right kind of mindset. But
I agree with you. I think that's the thing. A lot of people don't seem to understand that, like, with anything in life, consistency tends to be what gets you where you need to be. So if you're trying to do anything, like going back to the fitness thing, you know, consistency is what always wins. I was always kind of into fitness in, I suppose, in my late 20s. I got into going to the gym, got a PT and all that. And that was kind of like getting into fitness. And then I am quite self-destructive in that I love being busy. I absolutely love being busy. I love being swamped. I kind of like the stress of having almost too much to do. And I like delivering it. I like to be able to deliver at a high level, and I like to be able to do things. And so the problem I found was the gym was great, and it was also great for absolutely fucking punishing myself if I didn't feel like I was busy enough, which isn't a great thing. And so in 2019, I really I did myself some damage, just, you know, physically, mentally. I had a breakdown basically, because I was working too hard, and then because I didn't feel like I was working too hard, I just pushed harder in the gym. And so rather than use the gym as a way of like helping me to, you know, manage my stress day to day and helping me to mitigate some of the things that happen in my life being sedentary, I was just weaponizing it to just punish myself because it made sense to just like feel like I was working harder. And I've had to again reframe it. So, you know, COVID being, you know, the lockdown, that gave me time to kind of rethink about how I approach a lot of things. And so when the gyms opened again, I was able to go in and now I view fitness as a way of like, as like a release. And, you know, my PT is a good friend of mine. He's like basically my oldest friend. It's funny story, unrelated. He's actually, his parents are friends with my parents, but we didn't know that when we met. So we were like hanging around when we were 14, 15, playing guitar in, you know, my bedroom and that. My mum came up and was like, you're Jane's lad, aren't you? And he looked like, I am, yeah. And she found this picture, and it's us when we were like 2 or 3 in the back garden, like playing with like sand buckets and stuff. So we knew each other before we even knew each other, really. So that's quite, you know, as an aside. But yeah, so my mate is my PT. And so the way we deal with things is just consistency. And it's all about like, you know, trying to like, you know, make just movements of flexibility and making me feel better rather than weaponizing it. Because I know otherwise I'll just put myself in a grueling, you know, push-pull leg split and do it 6 times a week and just hurt myself otherwise, because I'll feel like, yeah, I've achieved something because I'm aching everywhere. And it's probably not good for me in any way, shape or form, under-eating, over-performing, you know, and just like aching every day and trying to get through your life when every part of you just aches completely. But yeah, it's such an important part for me. And the consistency of it is, as long as I go every day and do 45 minutes, I am noticeably better at everything else in my day. Like it changes everything for me. I'm mentally sharper, more relaxed, I'm more focused. And I think it's that whole thing of just that consistency, doing that every day. It is fundamentally, as you've said, you know, 3 weeks of that, I'm a different person. I'm like so much more focused, sharp, ready to go on the ball. If I don't do that, like I've had a week where I couldn't do it this week because we've been slammed with rehearsals for this theatre tour I'm on, and I'm now away from home and away from that gym. So I need to try and find somewhere I could go. But it's transformative for me. It's life-changing, you know, it is night and day difference. So you're probably right, really. A lot of people are just 3 weeks away from changing their life. But again, 3 weeks away from playing the guitar, just grind it out and sit there and try and play them licks and play them chords, and you'd be surprised that in 3 weeks you can do it. And 20 minutes a day, you could do a lot for 3 weeks.
Yeah. What other are there any other things in life that you sort of are careful to maintain, or maybe that you don't, that you should, like sort of exercise?
That's a loaded question, that, mate.
Well, it's my job, you know. If I can't give you unloaded questions, otherwise, like I mean, so yeah, for example, for me, I've been a lot more careful with my diet and with my routine. I guess obviously routine maybe is something that's a bit more difficult for you maybe when you're doing this kind of, up and down the country. But are there any other things, like, I don't know, whether it's just like avoiding certain things or making sure you do certain things that kind of keep you in check?
Yeah, I found like diet's a big one, because like I was like for years, touring in my early 20s, I would be the one who just didn't eat and just lived off black coffee for the longest time. It was just so easy to do it. And I think I was like so thin, painfully thin. And so I didn't really need to eat. I remember thinking, because, I remember doing a tour years ago on the drummer, like we'd have breakfast and the next thing you'd be thinking, I was like, how do you think we're going to go for lunch? I haven't eaten breakfast. I don't care about lunch. I probably have one meal a day. And so I lived like that for 10 years, So I think looking after diet and, making sure that I eat a lot of greenery. I mean, I've got no dietary requirements or anything like that, so I don't have to particularly watch anything. But just being careful on it and making sure that I eat, fruit and veg and stuff like that, because you just forget about like all those little things. And it's like, I do noticeably feel better for eating green veg. My stomach is not absolutely in bulk from the amount of black coffee I've drank, because my digestive system knows how to work because I've got green veg in me. It's which on tour, phenomenal. When you're in hotels or crashing in mad places, that's an invaluable thing. You don't want to be bunged up, Imodium level bunged up, because you've lived off black coffee and fucking service station sandwiches for 3 weeks. That's just, never again in my life am I going to do that. So that's one thing that I look after diet. I don't think I'd. I'm pretty careful with that. I like to look after myself in that way. Doing 10,000 steps, that's another one. Again, this week's been proved pretty difficult to do that, but I try and do that at least every day. Get your 10,000 steps, and that's pretty good. But other than that, like everyone's like, "Oh, do you manage caffeine intake?" And I'm just the worst for that. No, I'm not. I'm sat here surrounded by like coffee paraphernalia because
your travel lodge goodie bag, yeah.
I've drank all of mine, and the lads in the room next to me have given me theirs. That's kind of the situation we're in. I'm so bad for it. I'll do like 15 cups of coffee a day easy. It's like, it's not good. It's not. It's clearly not healthy.
Yeah, I know some people that have they'll have like Monster Energy at the most ridiculous times. Like I limit myself to pretty much 2 coffees a day. If I have 3, like I'm just all like jittery and.
So you're far more sensible than me, mate. You know what I mean? You've got your head screwed on. You know what I mean? I'm 35. I'm still making dickhead moves like this.
I found weirdly. I found the best. Well, it's not weird at all. The better my routine is, the less I need coffee, right? And like I found, it's one of those ones where I feel like coffee has become I enjoy it. Like I don't know whether I intend to quit caffeine at any point. I feel like I enjoy it, and I think it's useful. If you're a bit tired, I obviously don't want to rely on it, but when it gets into the afternoon, and they talk about the sort of, I remember hearing an interesting thing about how the half-life of caffeine, I can't remember how many hours it is a certain amount, but importantly, I think like the quarter life of coffee, in other words, when you've still got a quarter of it in your system, is about 12 hours or something. So again, I'm not a doctor, but if you drink a coffee in theory, I don't know how the effects, how long they kind of the effects last, but in theory, if you drink a cup of coffee at 12 midday, you've got a quarter of it sort of the caffeine in your bloodstream supposedly by midnight, which is like, that's actually quite a lot. And then if you drink 2 or 3 coffees, it's like, Sorry, I'm probably just
I don't even want to think about that.
I'm just ruining it.
It's not even medically. That's not worth thinking about.
It's just not good.
As I said, like 2019 was like a pretty heavy one where, like I was saying, I was beating myself up a lot, and then like it all came crashing down. So like I was having like mad heart palpitations. I went to see the doctor, and he was like, "So, how many cups of coffee do you drink every day?" And I was like, my measurements of caffeine has been not how many cups I drink, but how many jugs I drink, because I got a filter coffee machine. And he looked at me horrified and just went, "How many jugs of coffee do you drink a day?" And I was like, "Between 2 or 3." And he just went, "Yeah, you should probably stop that then, shouldn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I probably should, mate. Yeah, that's probably why I'm having heart palpitations." So, trying to cut it down to just, one jug rather than 2. But it's just gradually, as I've kind of got better, it's crept back up. So probably, you've highlighted that I need to look after this now, because I've already had about 5 this morning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. What's speaking of kind of, and you can get as sort of personal or impersonal as you like, but when you're talking about sort of having a sort of rough time around that period, what did you find, I guess, with the sort of positive spin? What were there things that you kind of discovered about yourself, or just about where you want to be, where you're going, that kind of helped you to get sort of move in the right direction from there?
Yeah, well, I can talk about like what really happened. I think it was a culmination of things. So I've been a session guitarist for most of my professional career, if you like. So I played with tons of hip hop artists. A lot of stuff I did was like neo soul, hip hop, pop, predominantly. And so I've done that for years, and a lot of the artists I worked with started to gain traction. So towards the end of 2015, 2016, one of the artists, Kof, who I've played with for years, he decided to take a break from music for a while and kind of looking into his production career, which been great for him. And he released some music this year, and it's been this year and last year. It's been great, and we've been playing together again, so that's been nice. But he opened loads of doorways for me, and showed me that world. And so, in being in that world, the calls came in more frequently for people who wanted a guitar player, and they'd seen me work with him and liked what I did, so they were like, come and work with us. So, it all just kind of snowballed until eventually I was playing with an artist called Zambolo. A phenomenal soul singer. He's like I don't use this lightly. He is a genius. Like of all the people I've met some incredible musicians. God, can't you say? He is a genius. I will stand by that. I think I've never known anyone to have such an understanding of what they want. For someone who couldn't play an instrument, to be able to understand harmony on the level that he did, and understand rhythm, and I've never seen anything like it. And he had a voice that was like a gift from God. It was unbelievable. He could sing anything. His vocal range didn't seem to have an end. So we'd do sound check, and he'd just go, oh, and it'd go on forever, like until there were no notes left. And I remember the first time a sound guy was like, "What's your highest note?" And he kind of looked at me and was like, I don't know. And he just went, and we were all stood there in just disbelief as he just belted through. It was unbelievable. But so I was playing with him, and that was an unbelievable experience. We did so much. Got to play Glastonbury a couple of times. Did like a 30-day festival run. Played Europe. Played in the US. 20-day arena tour with Paloma Faith. It was unbelievable. Like things I didn't know I was ever going to get to do. I might never do again. I loved every second of it. And the lads I was playing with, Peter, our drummer, he's a good friend of mine. He's like monster drummer, and T and Joe, that he played bass and keys. They were just monsters. It was like this band just felt so easy. It felt like everything was just almost too easy. When you're just in a band that's just, I loved every second of it. But in order to maintain that, it was quite difficult, because I obviously still had a full-time job, and so I was coming home from work, going and rehearsing and going and doing gigs, and we were up and down the country. So if you imagine that every day off I took between 2016, 2017, 2018, all of those days were accounted for as gig days. We were traveling, we were going somewhere. And so I haven't had a day off effectively since 2016. I think the last time I went on holiday was 2016. That was my last day off. that includes weekends and stuff like that when gigging and teaching. So it was a lot. We were constantly busy, and I couldn't drive either. So I was coming home from work, and I was getting trains everywhere, and I was carrying the gear, and like physically it was a lot. And so I was just doing a lot of things. I was doing a lot of work, and he was having a lot of issues with his label, basically. And it got to a point in 2019 where we played Glastonbury, and I think he just had enough. The label had kind of caused him some issues, and he just decided that he wanted some time away from music, and so he basically pulled the project. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It doesn't feel like it's something that I want to do. And I was like, I completely understand your position. He had a horrible situation, and financially it was quite burdensome. He was only a young guy, like 24, 25, and he must have had thousands of pounds riding on him, and thousands of dollars in terms of their capital, what they expected from him, and I don't think they delivered on him very well. That's my personal opinion of it. But that came to an end in basically after we played Glastonbury 2019. Excuse me. We came off stage, and he just was like, he announced to us that, this is the end of it. And so me and Pete Ropes, the drummer, drove home. Me and Ropes were just sat there like, what the fuck are we going to do? I've sunk 5-6 years of my life into this, and, it's the end. And I think that with a culmination of some like personal issues and, my work situation, because work had become, untenable at that time. I do IT security for a bank. It's the most mundane, sensible day job you can imagine. But at that time, we'd had, major issues, and I was working like 5 a.m. until, 6, 7 o'clock, and then going and gigging. And it was just unbelievable. It was all too much. It was a lot. And so I just kind of something had to give. And, it was just a collapse of everything around me. And, some personal things happened. I basically ended up back living with my mum and dad in the middle of buying a house, and it was just wasn't a good time. But it made me, I had to reevaluate life at that time, and I just couldn't really put my finger on what to do really. I've spent my life being a sideman. My whole thing was being the guy stands on the right-hand side of the stage, all in black, so I'm not inconspicuous, who just comes in and plays the part and then fucks off, basically. I want to be invisible. I want to get the job done. I want to be, that's the game. That's the aim of the game. And so, after years of doing that, and having some experiences with a couple of friends of mine who were like into YouTube, and the people around them, they were like, really what you need to do is kind of rebuild yourself, rather than trying to go out and be a sideman again. And I was like, okay, so I kind of like had to think about that. And so the positives that come from it is I realized that I needed to build up myself as a brand. And when I say like a brand, I don't mean in a cheesy way, like buy my t-shirt, man, and all that. I mean, just kind of like who I am as a person and the services that I offer. I will come and record your guitar parts and be on stage with you live and do that. But I think it's more about like how I brand myself. And I've spent so long putting into other people's projects. And so when other people's projects come to an end, that ends what I can do. And because I've got the only association with it I've got is playing the guitar, there's not a lot I can do with it. And so a lot of the people who are close to me, and I really thank them for it. They were like, you just need to build you up and become maybe not even just an artist, but more visible as yourself, as as a musician. And I think in doing that, that's meant that I've got more work, and it's worked twofold. I think if you devote your life to being a sideman and put your time into everyone else's project, as soon as they decide that they don't want that anymore, or if they decide that you're not the right person for it, you lose everything and you've gained nothing, but all you've done is put all of your time in. And that's what happened to me. And I don't blame, the artist that did that, but I don't blame him for it. I understand this position. I was naive in that I didn't think to build myself up in that time, when what I could have done is been a bit more active on social media. And I know everyone kind of goes on about like, oh, you shouldn't have to do that, but it's the industry now, isn't it? It's the world we live in. Everything is social media. I go on Instagram and look at stuff, and so why would posting anything be any different? It's just the kind of thing of trying to find your place in that. And for me, it's been understanding what I want to do and framing how I want to be perceived. That's been an interesting journey for me. And, I probably should have done it in my early 20s rather than in my mid 30s. But, you learn these lessons when you learn them. And unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, again, reframe it how you will, you've just got to take the rough with the smooth and find the path through it. And for me, it's been building myself up and finding things that I like, being an educator. That's something that interested me, and musicism afforded me a situation where I could come and teach. And that's been really, the first course I did with them. I'm incredibly proud of that. That was like something that, teaching modes and harmony. And then they've released some other stuff that I've done for them recently, which is a bit more, kind of accessible, but that gave me a route into education, which I've never really had other than private teaching. It's just finding those things, and then being a session guy, but also being visible as a session guy, so people know who you are. And so, I got the good fortune to play with Mary Spender. She was great. Still keep in touch with Mary. Done some work for her transcribing, and then the work with Mary transcribing. Her editor John, who's a very, very good friend of mine now, he works with Rabia. So he was like, well, Rabia wants transcriptions of some of his records. So he got me in touch. And I'd known Beer anyway through the Chapman Association and stuff like that. And I'd known him for a couple of years at the time. So we had a phone call, and he was like, yeah, I think, transcribe my album. So I sent him, he sent me all the stuff, and I transcribed three albums of material for him over 4 months, and he's released that, and the feedback's been fantastic. So it's been, I think you've just got to kind of put yourself out there, and I think I didn't really know what to expect when putting myself out there, but I'm only just dipping my toe into this at the moment, and this is just a big experiment for me. Even being here now talking to you is something that 2-3 years ago I probably wouldn't have done, because I felt as a sideman, it's not my place to be an artist. But I look at that, and then I think all of my heroes, Steve Lukather, Dan Huff, even Guthrie Govan to an extent, they're all session players, but they all have their own career at the end of the day. That is their music. And I was like, yeah, maybe that's what I kind of need to look into, because I'd never done that before. I'd never really thought about it before, and so now I am consciously aware of it. And I'm just going to play the social media game and put some stuff out there, and, do a million takes of one lick, thinking that you're terrible, and then put it up, and hope that someone likes it. But it is the game we play, and that's the state of the world. So if you want to be involved in it and you want to get work, you've got to do it. And that's the thing. So, what I've done in the past is kind of testament to, I will turn up and I will learn the songs, and I am capable, blah, 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 all of those things, that all of the faculties that you need as a musician to get you through that door and get you a job. And then I suppose what social media is doing is advertising you and being like, here's what I'm doing today, and here's what I'm doing this week, and here's what I'm playing tonight, and this is what I'm learning at the moment. And then, if you want to go back and look through all the stuff that I've done, here's all the stuff that I've done over the last 10 years that's quite cool. And if you're interested in hiring me for any work, then get in touch and we'll see what happens. And from there, it's kind of, that's where things started to happen. And that's kind of how I've ended up on this tour that I'm on at the moment, which I say tour, it's theatre show, so it's like small runs, so I'm never away for more than like 3 or 4 days. But I still managed to do this around having a 9 to 5 as well, which is difficult, but at the same time, it's manageable because of a few things, consistency, understanding where I'm up to with things, looking after myself. It is all possible. And, the aim of the game would be to be full-time at some point and go full-time music. And then at that time in the day where I'd be spent doing IT security, I could spend it finding more work, or, creating content for social media, which is an advertisement for yet more work. So it all plays into a bigger part. But I think that's the thing that I took away from it. As much as 2019 was a terrible experience, it was also a learning curve to understand that, I have to be better at promoting me, because no one else is going to promote me. That's the thing. And it feels very weird saying me as a concept. It feels so self-centered and so like, it's just such an odd idea, because you're thinking about it. It's just like, you're almost thinking it like it's so self-centered and so narcissistic, but that's what social media is, when your friends put up pictures, their holiday pictures, and they've been in the gym for 6 months to get ready for that, the Ibiza shred. And it's like, yeah, literally, you've done that for that picture. This is all about you. How is me playing guitar any less than that? So why do I feel weird about doing that when, my mates have, going on holiday and posting pictures of where they are and what they're up to? It's kind of like, look at me and look at what I'm doing. So why shouldn't I do that really with the music stuff? And it took me a long time to get my head around that. And even just saying it out loud to you, it's a thought that's rattled around my brain. Even saying it out loud to you, it's like, I think I've just reaffirmed it to myself there. Probably should post something at some point in the next, 6 months.
Yeah, I feel like it's difficult because I think there are a lot of things. I do think maybe we don't know, we've already seen it, but I do wonder if music will suffer just from musicians just having to do so many other things, but did they always have to do other things? I don't know. Like, it's, obviously you've kind of, I think it's a double-edged sword, because like, yes, you can do so many things, right? You can run your own business as a musician, you can you are your own business kind of thing, and you can be your own marketer, your own, publisher, whatever, all these things, and press agent, but like, that's all time, that could ultimately be spent writing songs. But then, arguably it's like, well, maybe 30 years ago, you just wouldn't have had any of them, full stop. Like, so it's a trade-off, and I don't know where I'm at with it yet. Same with Spotify. It's like, yes, it pays fuck all, but fuck all people would have heard your music if it didn't exist.
You've hit the nail on the head. We're in it. It's a strange time period. Excuse me.
You're not excused for that short moment.
Jesus. Don't know what that was. So I think with Spotify, or just the state of the industry, if you imagine, I came into playing music at, what we would deem a professional level, so touring, and where people are, paying to see you effectively, or paying to see the artist that you're playing for, in about 2009. So, about 14 years ago at this point. Yeah. So it's a lifetime ago, and it's so different than how things are now. And I imagine 15 years prior to that, it was very different again. But when I started, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, they really weren't these behemoths that they are now. And so a lot of that was still go out and gig, and it was forums, blog posts. And so I remember all the artist blog posts. And so to see the change in the industry while I've been in it, and understand that, and then to the change towards like social media, and obviously now TikTok is massive, and seeing, I know people who've been given one song deals by artists, and I was like, something I'd never experienced or seen before. So from my side, I always I've been with artists who've had like an album deal, never had a 2 album or 3 album, because they were dead in the water in 2009 when I started. So looking at that and being like, okay, well, people weren't getting that. And then it moved into this 360 package where they want a bit of everything and a bit of merch. And then it's like, okay, well, the industry's changing, so let's all move with that. And we're in a position now where you can do everything yourself. And I don't buy into this. You can put a song on the internet and everyone can hear it, because you and I both know that if you don't do anything around it, you can put a song on the internet and no one will listen to it. Like, I have put songs on the internet that no one has listened to, and I'm telling you now, it's not as easy as just put it on YouTube and it'll find the audience. It fucking won't. You know what I mean? You've got to put the work in first. It's not as simple as that. But we are in a position now where you don't need distribution. You can go on DistroKid or CD Baby or any of those kind of those platforms, those distribution platforms, and get you on all of the DSPs. You can get you on Spotify, get you on Tidal, get you on Deezer, get you on Apple Music. You've got YouTube content related, so you can just build a platform and you can just build your audience. No other time in history have you been able to do this. And if you look at people who've done it successfully, I'll use Mary Spender is another perfect example. She built a brand. She was playing pub gigs for 4 hours. We've had conversations about this because we've both done that life. She played pub gigs for 4 hours and then go into London and try and speak to A&R reps. The most success she ever had was putting that camera in her hand and making videos. And the thing is, she's personable enough that people like her, and she makes good content, and so her audience grows. And now she can write an album, and release an album, and people are into that, and she's got an audience who are going to go and listen to it. Never before in history have you ever had that. Imagine trying to put a video up. I remember a pre-YouTube time where you'd make a music video and put it on MySpace, and stuff like that. And it'd be like linked into Google Video and all that kind of crap, with HTML code. No one would see it, and it was like the camera quality was crap. And now everyone's got 4K camera on my phone, and I can make anything really. With very minimal tools, you can create good stuff, and it's amazing to go on TikTok and see what just kids with a phone can come up with, just that level of creativity, because they've grown up in this, technological world. If you like, they're born into it. I feel like, as much as I was born into with technology and computers and stuff like that, phones is something that over my lifetime, my lifespan, I remember having a Nokia 3310, and now I'm not saying I'm dead old or anything, but I remember having a 3310, and now I'm, sat here with a Samsung that's got everything that I could ever want in the world on it, and think of what an iPhone can do. And so if you think about that, you've got the best tool to create anything in the palm of your hand. And then it's just about using the platforms that are around you and the constructs. And it's okay, well, I'm going to create some YouTube videos, and I'm going to clip out those YouTube videos, and I'm going to put them on Instagram, and I'm going to create a Linktree account, stick that in my bio. And then what people are going to do is they're going to find them videos and then click through, and then they're going to follow me on YouTube. And then it works the other way with, click funneling and getting people in. And so once you've built that audience, and it's that thing of if you've got 1,000 true fans, you need anything else. You've got 1,000 true fans who'll buy anything. It's you supported for life. I think we've never had that before. I've never once in my career been in such a good position. And so I feel like us as guitarists and, trying to be artists, we need to utilize that and utilize that platform. What you're doing here is great. Consistently putting out good content, with the exception of myself waffling on, consistently putting out good content every week. And I don't know how frequently it is. Is it weekly or
it's a weird one. It's normally every couple of weeks. I'm kind of I'm sort of, at the moment, I'm playing catch up a bit, so I'm doing one a week at the moment, but I'll be back to every 2 weeks pretty soon. So but either way, just consistent.
Consistency.
And it's one of those things. I mean, I did think, do I just pause it for a few weeks? But I thought, no, I'll keep going, because I know if I pause it, then I'll pause it, and then I'll be I've got another week to get some more in. It's no, if I just keep booking people, then I'll keep I'll keep it up, and hopefully it's growing slowly but surely, and it's
doing
also,
well. I mean, it's like the inspiration thing, isn't it? You've got to push through. You've got to keep going.
Yeah. And I found because what I found as well is it's so difficult to get the content out there consistently, and what I've been doing lately, I noticed it as soon as I started publishing at 2 shorts or 2 reels a day, that it completely, the growth kind of, I think, probably more than doubled. But obviously that's really hard to keep up with. I think I sort of burnt out a bit on it, just editing all these videos. It's I'm not a video editor. I mean, I can do it, and but
mate, that's one of my least favorite tasks in the world, editing video.
Yeah, so
I dislike it, but I need to reframe it. It's I like editing video, really get my brain into it. So I trick myself into thinking that I like it, so I'll do more of it, so I'll make more videos. So I think I understand that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, but now the good thing is, it's kind of been long enough, I think, that what I can start to do is put out, if I'm doing 2 guests a week, is to put out 3 or so reels. At the moment, last few I've only done 1 per guest, and I'm going to go back and get some more done. But if I can put out 1 reel per guest, 3 per guest, and have 2 per week, that's kind of thereabouts. A week's worth is 1 a day, thereabouts. And then also do 1 a day from an old episode. I've now been doing this about a year, just over a year. So I've got, what is it? I think this is 96, episode 96. Don't know what I'm going to do for 100. Maybe that'll be, we'll see. But I basically got enough episodes that if I put out 1 a day, it's going to be like 3 months before I actually get to the most recent episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it'll be long enough that like it won't be weird for me to post the most recent episode again in 3 months. No, it's going to be like, oh, he's just recycling, because 3 months is quite a long time, and Instagram reel memory. So
I think like you're not really recycling it. It's like you've created a library of content.
Yeah.
And so you can go in and pick stuff from that library, because you're not putting the whole reel on Instagram. You're not going to put like an hour and a half conversation on Instagram. So you've got like, at minimum 96 hours of conversation that you can go in and go, that was great. That's a little nugget there. That's a good 30 seconds. That's just, you'll know yourself where the bits of the conversation that you wanted to take. But, even listening through and finding stuff that might be useful, or I'm sure there's loads of stuff there. It's just, when you think 96 hours is a lot of time, that's a lot of talk, and there's definitely some nuggets in there that you can take out and just, so you won't feel like you're recycling. You probably got more in there than you think. It's just, we've got to go back and listen to a couple of them and be like, oh, that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I've done that. It takes so long. It's good though, because it's funny going back and listening to some old conversations. But yeah, we've covered quite a few. It's interesting hearing your kind of how you've sort of adapted to the sort of, or how you've changed your view of how you're kind of approaching music, moving from that kind of sort of, like you said, the sort of sideman role to like trying to not reframe, although we did talk about that, but like trying to sort of realign your kind of direction.
Who am I?
Yeah. And it's I think there's a lot of, I have respect for anyone that kind of does that. Because I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because then you've got to kind of confront some things about like, okay, am I actually doing what I want to be doing here? Which is, actually makes you face some not so brilliant sort of truths about yourself.
It's
like
me with
my exercise
difficult conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I sort of a few months ago, I was like, no, I'm really not very fit. And you had to sort of confront like, okay, I know if I'm going to have to get up early in the morning and go for a run, and it's going to suck. And I finally, it took me probably about 2 months before I went for a run, and I was like, oh, that was kind of, I get back and I'm tired, but I'm like, oh, that was like, I'm fine. And, I can kind of just have a shower, have a coffee or whatever, and I just feel normal again, and I think it's...
you get past the discomfort.
Yeah. So it's, I'm sort of on a bit of a journey of that still, with sort of just doing that stuff. So, maybe we should check in again in, I don't know, a year's time and see where you're
Definitely, at. Yeah. Maybe you're looking like Ronnie Coleman. Like, wait, baby.
Yeah, my shoulders will just be like up here.
Yeah, absolutely no neck, just massive traps.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm doing 3 runs a week, and then 3 gym sessions, and alternating every other day. So hopefully
that's amazing. That's like, most people don't do that in their life. I think the thing is, most people just think that like, yeah, I've done 2 runs this week. It's like, hey, human beings are designed to walk like 4 to 7 miles a day. Sitting at a desk and running for 30 minutes is just not going to cut it like twice a week. You've got to just do more. So what you're doing there, like, I think the average guy is probably not doing that. So I think you've kind of like, you're definitely on the right path to kind of consistently build yourself up.
It's funny you say that, because I did one of those park runs this morning, and it's the first time I've done it. And it was 5K, and I did it in 25 minutes, which I think is a pretty funny. But you say like most guys aren't doing it, and I think as with my age, they rank you, which is it's good and it's bad. And I got like basically bang in the middle. I was like, actually, I'm in the middle of people who get up on a Saturday morning and go for a run. So I guess that's a different middle to be looking at. But
you're looking at a middle of a percent.
Yeah. I did. So I started doing like. I've split the running into like, I do a distance run, and then I do like sprints, and just trying to get like my sort of what's it? Sort of maximum.
Your VO2 max.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that because I didn't want to sound all poncy and like I know more than I do.
Say it, it's fine.
and then what I'm going to start doing is Saturday do the 5K park run and just try and improve my time. But doing those sprints, I found a hill near me. It's 250 meters. So I'll just sprint up it, like, 80% sprint kind of thing. And I noticed, like, I get near the first one, I got like probably 230 meters, and then my body kind of goes, whoa, and then I just had to like jog to the top. But then the next one, it's like, I get to like 200 meters, and then my body kind of conked out. And I noticed, like, and I felt like I'd never exercised before in my life after that. It was like,
hill sprints are the devil. I'm just going to be too, I just need to fill me water bottle.
That's all good, man.
1 second. Yeah. I can still hear you. I've got my headphones on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So I just remember doing that. I got back, and I remember the first time I went for a run, a few months ago, I just felt like ill afterwards. Getting back from that, it just felt like the exact same feeling. I was like, oh, okay, I've got there's a part of my fitness and he's catching up. But I mean, it's the same. I suppose you can find some analogies in life. I guess, you can neglect certain things. I wouldn't say I was neglecting it, but maybe you not even realize you're not doing certain things. So, it's
easy to do that, isn't it? I think, hill sprints are the devil. I've never advised anyone, you know what you need in your life? Hill sprints.
They're horrible.
It's not something that you need, but it is good. I think anything where you kind of in that 80%, heart rate, that's, I don't think people do that enough. It's, not pushing themselves. And I think we can benefit from that. And it's like anything else, isn't it? Like playing guitar, what is the maximum speed? What can I do? What is my max? What happens when I push myself? I know there's a speed I can get to where it all falls to bits. It's just gone. Control is gone, and I am just in, basically it's just whatever happens. Am I going to hit these notes? Is this hand going to be okay? Is this hand going to be okay? Who knows? You know what I mean? But like you've got to push yourself there to kind of control that eventually, and then eventually you'll kind of be on top of that. But like anything, you've just got to push. You've got to keep pushing, haven't you, and see what you can do.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. I think hopefully people will, and I think it'd be good to I'd like to see more, particularly on just the fitness side of things. Really, I think I think I've noticed among musicians, it does seem to be a rarity to find people who really like commit the time to it. And I'd like to encourage more people, just because, I've only been doing it like 3 or 4 months, but I think, I've benefited so much from getting fitter and eating healthily and stuff. That
it's amazing what it does for you, your life. It's amazing. Like, I think people underestimate the benefits it has on everything else that you do. I think, are you aware of Ross Edgerly?
Yes, I started following him recently. He's crazy, yeah.
He's fucking nuts. The guy is my hero. Like, I just love that he's just absolutely fucking batshit crazy. Swimming around Great Britain, he was insane, absolutely insane. But like, just his approach and his work ethic is something that I love. I love that he's just so, unashamedly like, I'm doing this. This is the thing that's happening, and he'll just push himself, and just to see what he can do. I love that. I love that concept in anything in life. I love when people just go, I'm just going to see what I can do. I just want to see how far I can go. I just want to test my limits, and I love that. And I think everyone has to do that. I think if you watch kids test the limits all the time. When they learn how to walk, when they learn how to talk, just test the limit, just push the boundary, or touch the boundaries of your existence, and that you've got to do it occasionally. You just got to see what you can do. All these things are like measurements of, well, I'm going to do this again in 6 months' time and see if I'm better at it. So you just got to just keep pushing. I think it's so beneficial.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good note to kind of close out on, because I think hopefully people will get a positive kind of. Or maybe they'll just get an entirely negative takeaway. Maybe they'll think this was crap. Who knows?
Fuck them guys.
Yeah, they're all wrong.
I don't care about them people. No, don't follow me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always, there's, that's a whole other thing, those kind of people.
Oh, yeah. So I love all that.
I kind of, some of the, I was saying to the last guest, Kian, Kian Hushman, is that how you say his name? He's recently put out a track, Australian guy.
I do know.
He asked your question for I was saying to him about how like I put up a Trivium cover that I did with my old band, and it was like a last minute acoustic cover that we had to rewrite like in the week. We had a week to do it. Among all the other things I had to do that. And then some guy was like, why didn't you play it? I played it in E flat, and he's like, why didn't you play it in E? And I'm like, what? Like,
It's just fucking matter. Yeah.
Like, anyway, I've bitched about that enough anyway. So what I need is a question for the next guest to start their episode, and an artist you'd like to recommend.
Well, I always normally plug me boy Jack Gardner, but you've had him on, haven't you?
Well, you can plug him though.
I plug him anyway. You know, he's basically like my little brother. I love Jack. I've known him for like 15 years. He is the best guitar player I have ever seen. Like, I don't use best lightly either. He's just fucking ridiculous. I remember when I met him, he was 14, and the first thing we played was Scarified by Racer X. And have you ever seen Step Brothers with Will Ferrell?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we just become best friends? Yep. It was like that, like when we finished it. And I was like, since then, we've just been mates. We've played in bands for years, and I've just watched them get better and better and better and better and better. Like, and it's like terrifying. We used to play in bars, and you just stand next to him, and he just takes solos and like trade licks. And it's just like, it's just depth and knowledge and feel, tone, everything. Just ridiculous. So like, I always want to plug him. I just think he's amazing. I got to see him play with Wayne for the tour he's just done with Pliny. I got to see him twice. Got to see him in Bristol and in Manchester, and just incredible. And then we had a bar gig on Friday, and I had to play in front of Pliny, which was fun, playing funk tunes. Jack put up Pliny. I was like, oh yes. Thanks. Cool. Yeah, this is not terrifying in the slightest. Yeah, so that was fun. But yeah, so just want to plug Jack because he's boss. I love him. Yeah, so
awesome.
I'll plug him.
And then, so I need a question to open my next conversation as well.
Oh,
can angle it.
Do you know who you're going to have next?
No, actually, and also I wouldn't want to say because I want to keep it anonymous because I think it makes it more interesting, and you got to be a bit more open ended as well.
Okay.
Also, what I need to do is get filler music while people think of their answers. Someone pointed out to me that there's like dead air time between the amount of times I'll ask this.
I probably should have thought of this prior to coming on, shouldn't I?
It's all good.
Yeah. It's so difficult because there's so many things that I'd love to ask, but then it's, production questions, songwriting questions.
Open-ended is normally best, something that, because it might not be a songwriter or
Okay. When did you feel you found your voice as a musician or producer?
Excellent. Sounds good. Yeah. Be interesting to find out when, I still don't know if I found mine yet, so I could answer that.
I think everyone kind of feels the same. Just to answer my own question kind of thing, I think for me, it was kind of listening back to recordings and being like, oh, that's how I sound. Like realizing that you've got a tone, no matter what amp I play through, I always seem to sound exactly the same. And it's like, okay, that's nothing to do with the gear. That's just who I am and how I approach attacking the strings, where I pick, how I fret the note and the vibrato, all those little things, and how heavy-handed or light you pick, all those things. And it's only when you're listening back to yourself, and I've had the pleasure of playing on tons of recordings over the years with different artists, so you get to hear yourself in different contexts, and it's one of those things that after a while you go, I can recognize me, and at the point you can do that, you're like, okay, well that's a pretty good indication that I found my voice. But I don't think anyone ever sits down and goes, I'm going to go and try and find my voice. I think you just learn things and you just keep learning and keep progressing until eventually you just you have your voice. It's like you don't think about speaking again. You don't think about talking in the same way. You don't think about finding your voice. You just learn things and then, assimilate that into who you are, and that becomes your voice. That becomes what you do. And that's the same with music. I view music very holistically. I think everything should start out as a sound and you give it a name later. I'm not really bothered about the theory of it. To kind of clarify that statement, I am bothered about theory, but in a way that I like to use it to discuss something with someone else. So if I'm talking to a sax player, I can't tell them to play the third fret because they don't have a fret. It doesn't make sense. So
that's why.
Yeah. So it's that thing of like being able to have a conversation with another musician who's got absolutely no idea what your instrument is, because that's all theory is. It's just a name to a sound and how accessible it is. And when people turn around and go like, oh, Eddie Van Halen and Slash didn't need, I don't know, I use them as good examples all the time, but they didn't need theory. It's like, yeah, but some people are just born with great ears and they just know what sounds great. And whether they know what the name of it is or not, it doesn't matter. They know how to access that sound. The rest of us aren't born with that greatness. And so we need to give a name to that sound so we can recreate it. And so that's where it's useful for us. So everything starts out as a sound and you just give it a name. That's what theory is. And so like, that's why I view music holistically. And I think learning to speak is the best way to kind of talk about learning music. Kids just copy, like little babies just copy until they can form full sentences. And only when they're in school do we start to go, this is a verb, this is a noun, this is a sentence, this is how you start a sentence. This is, you just let them talk for, they've been talking for 5-6 years of their life before you tell them what any of that is. That's, why should guitar be any different? Just copy, learn things that you like, and then dissect it later. Dissect it when it all makes sense, and you probably find that you're in a better position because you understand how to play the instruments. You play the things you like. You know how to use the things that you've learned. That's how it makes sense to me.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, I can kind of resonate with that. Kind of trying to. It's like a language, isn't it? And I think that's
yeah,
a good takeaway. But do you have anything you want to plug for you?
Yes, I do. Going back to my earlier statement of I need to be good at promoting me because no one else is going to promote me. Here I go. I've got a project coming out with Alex Hutchings. I don't know if you know Alex, great fusion guitar player. I
know the name. I'm sure I know. Yeah.
Yeah, go on YouTube in a minute when this is finished and he'll just blow your head off. He's another one of them scary Jack Gardner level monsters. Yeah, so I've got a project with him that we're finishing at the end of this month, that hopefully will about this year. That's pretty much it. So just keep an eye on that, really, because I'm going to be teasing bits and bobs of that on social media, and just a lot of the videos of him playing lead licks and me just sitting there like, yeah, great, that. Yeah, hit record, do that again. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, we haven't really decided if we're going to give it a name or whether it'll just be Phil Dyer and Alex Hutchins or what. But keep an eye on it because we're gonna do that.
Nice, wicked, cool. Well, thank you very much for chatting. It's been good.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.